We are just over 6 weeks away from the legalization of recreational marijuana use in Canada. But what will legalized marijuana mean for the workplace? To discuss how employers can prepare for legal pot, we are joined by Alex Lucifero, Managing Associate of Samfiru Tumarkin LLP. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, Annette.
Well, a big question for employers, and I'm assuming that you're probably fielding a lot of questions from them. A new survey found 71% of employers felt they're not ready for marijuana to be legalized because they don't know how to deal with it. What kind of questions are you hearing from clients?
That number sounds about right, Annette. It's, we're receiving dozens and dozens of calls from small companies, larger corporations, and the first question that we typically get asked by employers is, does this mean that we have to allow recreational use of marijuana in the workplace? And so what I can tell employers watching at home, management employees, owners of businesses, is that unequivocally no, you do not have to allow the use of recreational marijuana in the workplace. There are rules and laws that govern that kind of situation. Specifically in Ontario, we're talking about the Cannabis Act, this provincial legislation that says that you cannot consume marijuana in the workplace, at least recreationally.
So should then employers be creating a policy that puts it down in writing that they are not, employees are not allowed to consume marijuana in the workplace, for recreational use, and what the consequences may be if they do?
That would certainly be my recommendation. So to begin with, employers should already have drug and alcohol policies. For employers out there that don't, now's probably a pretty good time to put one in place and to include marijuana in that. And the reason for that is, as I just mentioned, there are laws out there that don't allow employees to consume marijuana at work. However, you want to have a policy in place, number one, confirming that as a rule of your employment and your workplace, but also to implement steps and disciplinary procedures in the event that an employee is found with recreational marijuana at work. So you want to make sure that employees and employers understand that these are the rules that govern this kind of situation, and these are the repercussions for somebody being caught at work with recreational marijuana.
Now, does the same thing go for if somebody shows up to work impaired by marijuana? Not using at work,
Sure.
But impaired by it?
As an employer, you have every right to send that employee home, to potentially even discipline that employee if they're showing up to work impaired from marijuana. The gray area and the difficulty becomes, well, how do you know that exactly? And that becomes, that's a question that police are going to have to figure out as well. It becomes a tricky situation. Drug testing in the workplace is a very, very delicate, sensitive situation and issue in employment law. And I'd encourage employers to reach out to an employment lawyer to discuss those issues.
Can they drug test? Will they be able to do that, employers?
In very limited circumstances. So you've got to be very, very careful as an employer around those kinds of situations. On its face, you cannot drug test an employee at work. If you have reasonable grounds to believe that that person is impaired, you can potentially drug test. If you are working in a safety-sensitive work environment, you can potentially drug test. If you have a history of drug abuse, for example, at work, then that opens the door as well. But again, these are exceptions to the general rule, which is drug testing is very, very tricky and,
now,
we've put the
emphasis here on recreational marijuana use, but it's different for medicinal use, isn't it?
Correct, exactly. And this is currently the state of the law as it is when it comes to medical marijuana.
Right.
And so we can distinguish in a case like this between the recreational use of marijuana, which is definitely not allowed, definitely a huge no-no for employees, and marijuana for medicinal purposes. Obviously, you have a prescription as an employee for a situation like that. And yes, employers do need to accommodate employees that are effectively disabled or are dealing with an injury or an illness that requires the use of medical marijuana. In situations like that, you have to accommodate an employee's use of that prescription drug like you would accommodate any other use of a prescription drug.
But the employee would have to provide, I would assume, some kind of proof from their physician.
Absolutely, yes, in the form of a doctor's note or some further medical information. An employer has the right, in some circumstances, to request additional medical information and to see whether there are potentially any other ways in which an illness or injury can be treated other than impairing an employee by the use of medicinal marijuana.
Alex, thank you very much. Some great information this morning
pleasure,
as we inch closer to the legalization of pot in this country. It is coming quickly.